I'll start this evening with a question. Let me ask, how many of you still get the newspaper delivered to your home? Wow, this is a totally anachronistic thing. All right, how many of you are under 70? Under 60? There we go. Under 50? 2? Under 40? All right. You guys are old souls. You're old souls. I remember going out as a kid. I loved to run out and get the newspaper. There's something about just running out and grabbing it. When I was a kid, it was somewhere in the lawn, in the bushes, wherever someone had thrown it. I'd grab it, run inside, open it up to the sports section, see who won last night's game, check the box score. Oh yeah, last night, with that we know. Please don't give away what's happening now for those, just kidding. I would look at the box score, I would memorize the batting averages at the bottom of the page. You really don't need to do that anymore. But as an adult then, I shifted from the sports section to the front section, to the opinions, as any responsible adult should do. But actually, it's Yom Kippur, I should be honest. I was still going to the sports first. But in recent times, things for me have shifted a little bit. More and more, I find myself just pulling out any other section other than the front section. I've always loved science, so that's a no-brainer on Tuesdays in Science Times. I go to travel. I've even started glancing at my wife's favorite, the cooking section. And I was really tempted to procrastinate and make Marion Barros's plum torte instead of writing this sermon. Okay, that's actually not true. But I stay away from the front section. Not because I don't care about the big stories, but because it's just become so hard to face. The news leaves me with a little bit of a knot in my stomach. All of the breakdowns in civil discourse, rise in violence, polarization, the anti-Semitism, the erosion of truth, wars, and on and on. When I open up that section, I just feel overwhelmed. And so far too often when I pull the paper out of the bag, I pull it out with a little bit of dread. This summer, with my shoulders feeling a little bit heavy, I walked into a lecture at the Shalom Hartman Institute given for rabbis and Jewish educators by Dr. Malila Hellner-Eshed. She is a brilliant scholar of Kabbalah and mysticism with whom I've been studying now for about 15 years, and she was our Glotzer Scholar in Residence, although it was at the height of Zoom, so it was on Zoom. No, it was the height of COVID, which was Zoom, so you might not have remembered. But her teachings confront the world, the fractures in our world with such honesty and depth. And I think her wisdom can guide us in this fraught moment. Now, that class was happening the day after Shvasrei B'Tammuz, the 17th day of Tammuz, one of the minor fast days in the Jewish tradition. Now, we have lots of days of destruction and sadness. We started to actually combine events into one day so we would have not too many. The most well-known is, of course, this is not the Baruch Shem, you could say it, yeah, Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, because what happened? the destruction of both temples in Jerusalem, the first and the second. But the 17th of Tammuz, which was 3 weeks before the destruction, is seen by the Mishnah as a significant date on many levels. First of all, when the temple is destroyed in the year 70, in 586 BC, and the first temple is destroyed, the walls of Jerusalem are breached on the 17th of Tammuz. But the Mishnah says actually it goes all the way back 1,000 years before that. As Moses came down Mount Sinai with the 2 tablets, the Mishnah says the 17th of Tammuz is when he shattered them. It was also the day in later history when the Torah was burned. And then one final thing. It was the day when the Tamid sacrifice ended. Niftal HaTamid. Niftal HaTamid. This is especially devastating. The Tamid, the sacrifices that were brought every day, Tamid, that was our covenantal relationship with God, serving as a constant reminder of God's ongoing presence in our lives. It meant constancy, stability. It was literally the always. Morning and evening, day after day, no matter what else was happening in the world, the lambs were brought. A national sacrificial offering, 24/7 spiritual coverage on behalf of the entire Jewish community, a sacrifice offered even before those of Shabbat and holidays. This was the always. It was the steady heartbeat of the temple of Jerusalem, of Jewish life. And then it stopped, it ceased to exist. A century before the Tamid actually ended, we find a foreshadowing in a very haunting story in the Talmud. 2 Hasmonean brothers, Hyrcanus and Aristobulus, they were a little bit assimilated, in case you're wondering. They were locked in a bitter civil war for control of Judea. At one point, Aristobulus's forces besiege Jerusalem, while Hyrcanus and his supporters are trapped inside. But in the midst of this chaos, the Kohanim, the priests inside the temple, try to preserve the sacred rhythm of daily life. Every morning, they would lower money in a basket outside of the walls from the temple to purchase lambs for the Tamid, for the daily sacrifice, which then would be brought up. As long as that Tamid sacrifice was offered, the heartbeat of Jewish life continued. But one day, the besieging army, their fellow Jews, mocked them. And instead of sending up a lamb, they sent up a pig. And when that pig dug its hooves into the walls of the Temple Mount, into the stones themselves, the earth trembled. A desecration so unthinkable that creation itself seemed to shudder in protest. This infighting cracked the foundations of holiness. And of course, those foundations finally gave way during the Roman destruction of Jerusalem 2,000 years ago. And then the unthinkable became the reality. There was no more Tamid. That was not just the loss of a ritual. It was the collapse of everything that felt permanent. Niftal HaTamid. When the Tamid ended, Israel then discovered that the always was gone. I think some of us feel that a little bit too. The tamid of our world, the trust that democracy will hold, that science will guide our decisions, that truth will matter, that we can talk to each other across differences. It's been interrupted. The land trembles under our feet. And so when the always is gone, what do we do? Dr. Lerner Eschel presented a text from the Zohar, the great mystical text of the 13th century, where it says that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, our great sage from 1,000 years earlier, that he saw that the world in his time was tipping into danger, which, as we just heard, it was. But his response was not to despair. It wasn't to withdraw. He calls out, "Eit lahasot l'Adonai." It is time to act for God. And so what does he do? He gathers up his companions, ulu chevraya, in the Aramaic. Come together, my friends. In moments of rupture, the mystical response is to convene, is to come together as we do tonight. We study the world not alone, but together. She brought the Hasidic master, Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav, who in his allegory, The Master of Prayer, he describes kingdoms around the world that exalt one value or another. One of them is filled with joy, another one with wealth, another one with wisdom, and one with power and might. But he sees each one of them collapse into absurdity and despair. He reminds us that no one particular quality can sustain us. The world needs balance. We must hold many values simultaneously: justice and mercy, strength and compassion, tradition and innovation. Our work is not to idolize one truth, but to weave opposites into a tension that creates balance. I'll offer a third answer to what do we do from our own liturgy of these Yamim Noraim, of these high holy days. The dominant metaphor of these days is that God is sitting up on a throne with a book, and God's writing. As a kid, I always wondered, it's Yontif, how can you write? But apparently, God can write. God is writing down who will live and who will die according to Nutana Tokef. That's an intense metaphor. God is weighing every deed. God is judging from Rosh Hashanah all the way to today until it ends tomorrow night when it's sealed. It's a powerful metaphor. And what do? We plead to God over and over again to move from your Kisei Hadin, your throne of judgment, to the Kisei Rachamim, to the throne of mercy, of compassion. As we say in the Slichot prayer, when we ask for forgiveness, Kum mi kisei din, v'shev al kisei rachamim, v'hitna'eg b'im banecha b'midat harachamim, v'konesh lahem lifnim mishurat adin. Arise from the throne of judgment and sit upon your throne of mercy. Deal with your children with compassion and guide them beyond the strict measure of justice. If even God is asked to move from strict justice to mercy, Kal v'chomer, how much more so must we do the same? This is what the Zohar calls hamtakat hadinim, the sweetening of judgment, making it a little less harsh. So how do we move forward when the always is gone? The answer is sort of simple, but it's demanding. We gather, we balance, and we sweeten. Here at Emunah, that's what we strive to be every single day. We are a community that gathers daily in prayer, in learning, in support of one another, in support of our people, in friendship, in song, in deeds of kindness, so no one feels alone. It's a community that balances, honoring many voices, as I spoke about on Rosh Hashanah, many needs, many expressions of Jewish life, weaving them together into one sacred home. And we're a community that sweetens the harshness of the world through kindness, comforting mourners, visiting the sick, delivering a meal, and making the minyan. And as most of you know, at least I hope, I've been blessed to be part of a project, Prayers for Liberty, an interfaith effort to uphold the basic foundations of democracy, due process, free speech, the rule of law. Twice we've gathered and retraced Paul Revere's ride in reverse. Gotta love Paul Revere. But he did it on a horse, and we did it with our feet, all the way from Lexington back to Boston. Hundreds of people on our last one, 600 on Labor Day. Jews and Christians of different denominations, Democrats, independents, and Republicans. These gatherings are not about partisanship, but they're about principle. They remind us that the always of our democracy cannot be taken for granted. We must rebalance our civic life with compassion, justice, and simple kindness. What's been the greatest gift to me, and what struck me the most in this work, are the friendships that I've been able to form across religious divides. Religious voices from every tradition have such beautiful things to teach one another. You can learn so much from everyone. I think religious voices from every tradition must unite to reawaken compassion and acts of service, reminding us of the values at the heart of our faith, of all of our faiths in our country. So let's circle back to where we began. The loss of the Tamid meant that the always was threatened, was gone. And we know that feeling. Each of us maybe carries our own version of what it means to be out of balance or broken, whether in the world or simply in our own lives and in the anxieties of our daily life. Whatever it is, our tradition gives us a path. Gather, rebalance, and sweeten. Gather to undo the sense of aloneness that leads to shutdown and despair. Rebalance so that we do not become fixed and worshiping a single truth, excluding other possibilities and perspectives. And sweeten, so judgment is tempered by mercy, so harshness yields to understanding. That is our calling. That is our work in the wider world. And this is our hope for the year ahead. That we may steady ourselves, calm the trembling earth that the Talmud spoke about, and embrace the deep rachamim, compassion, by bringing more kindness and more mercy to our world and to our lives. Let us say, Amen. Mar Chatima Tova.